Alright, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Kohala Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone and salutations to you brothers that's watching and praying in sincerity and faith and keeping his word diligent until the end. This is another episode of history and the law. We go into the history and we go into the law, to the scriptures and bring out some things. Today's topic, or the topic of this episode, is we're gonna go into the story of David and Goliath. Going back to the book of 1 Samuel, the 17th chapter, and we're gonna read that account and bring out some precepts pertaining to that account. Because this is back on the time where King David, he came into power. He started off a young man, and Yahweh Bashim Yahshua was with him to overcome this obstacle of Goliath and get him notoriety in Israel. So this is the story. We go to 1 Samuel, the 17th chapter. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shokoah, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shokoah and Azekah in Ephes Demim. Shalaki, if I'm reading those words wrong. Verse 2, it says, "And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines." Because back then, Israel and the Philistines were bitter enemies. The Philistines being those Hamitic nations of the sons of Ham. Israel, we being, which we are, we're the sons of Shem, And it says, and Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, and he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, and he had greaves of brass. He had greaves of brass upon his leg, and a target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. So this guy Goliath, which in the Hebrew his name is Goliath, which that means splendor, right? He was decked out. He had a helmet of brass. He had a coat of mail. It said the weight of his coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. He had greaves of brass upon his legs. He had a target of brass between his shoulders, and his staff and his spear was crazy. This guy, hey man, when Israel saw Goliath being of that stature, tall, and having that much armor on him, it's going to say it, but Israel was in fear, man. They didn't know who was going to take him out, who was going to, fight him. It said, this is verse 8, and it says, "And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and you servants to Saul?" He said, "Am not I a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and kill him, then shall ye be our servants, and serve us." And that's what he said. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. He's basically boasting. He said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Yeah, they were scared, man. You know. Verse 12. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men. The man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of the 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistines drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000. And look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. This is a side note. The scriptures say man's goings are of the Lord. So the Lord put the spirit on Jesse, David's father, to have him bring provisions to the men in the camp. To the captain, he bought cheese. They bought ephah of bread and parched corn. You know, and as you continue to read the story, which we are going to read, you're going to see what happens. The Lord put the spirit on Jesse to tell David to do something. And what happened after that, man? Verse 20 says, in verse 19, Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath, by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same word, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were so afraid. So this man, Goliath, or Goliath, he brought fear to Israel, pursuant to verse 24. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were so afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him the daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? Yeah, and David was boasting. David probably is mad when he said, man, look, this uncircumcised, man, because the other nations are uncircumcised, man. We, the Israelites, we have the custom of circumcision. So these other nations, they're uncircumcised. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine to come up against the armies of the living power, which is Yahweh Bashim Yahushua? Who is he to defy Israel, man? You know, Who the hell is he, man? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left thou? Whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart. For thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. Yeah, because this is King David's brother getting on him. You know, but his father gave him the order. His father gave him the charge to come down and give the provisions to the army. Verse 29. And David said, What have I not now done? Is there not a cause? It says, verse 30, And he turned from him towards another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered him out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living power. It says, David said moreover, The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David. And the man that bare the shield went before him. And it says, this is verse 42, And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. It says, And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the power of Israel, and the power of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Now, when you get into the word, the Lord of hosts, the Hebrew word is tazabak, which is the Lord of hosts, man, and it's the Lord of his army and the Lord of armies, which you know who consists of the Lord's armies, the angels and the men, you know, the men of war, or the elect, and that's part of the Lord's army. But he came in the name of the Lord of hosts, as it is written in Exodus 15:3. It said, The Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name. Verse 46, it says, This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a power in Israel. So King David, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua used King David to let all the nations, in particular the Philistines, know that there's a God in Israel, man. You know, and he used King David to carry that out. Let me see. Verse 47, and all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran towards the army to meet the Philistines. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, Goliath's sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. So they put all their hope in, the Philistines put all their hope in Goliath, you know, and the Lord made a quick work of Goliath, man. But I'm going to stop right there with the story, and I'm going to bring out these few precepts real quick. The first precept is going to be, this is the book of Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter. Deuteronomy 20th chapter says, when thou goest out to battle against thy enemies, and seest horses and chariots and a people more than thou, be not afraid of them. For the Lord thy power, which his name is Yahweh, is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be, when ye are come nigh unto the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people, and shall say unto them, Hear, O Israel, you approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint, fear not, and do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them. For the Lord your power is he that goeth with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. And that's what happened. Israel must have forgot that Yahweh Bashim Yahushua was with them, you know, because when you read the story, they fled from Goliath, man. So the Lord put the spirit on King David to carry that out. Now this is the next scripture I want to bring out. This is the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs 21 verse 31. It says, the horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety is of the Lord. So in battle, you know, you can have a multitude of chariots, a multitude of horses, tanks, whatever, but the safety cometh from Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, because at the end of the day, it's the Lord. He killeth, he maketh alive, man. And he was with King David that day. Like the scriptures say, the angel of the Lord encampeth around those that fear the Lord. Alright, the next scripture is, and I'm going to close it out after this one. But this is Psalm 44. And Psalm 44 verse 4. It says, Thou art my king, O Yahweh. Command deliverance for Jacob. Through thee we will push down our enemies. Through thy name will we tread them under that rise up against us. For I will not trust in my bow, neither shall my sword save me. But thou hast saved us from our enemies, and hast put them to shame that hated us. In Yahweh we boast all the day long, and praise thy name forever. Shalom. And Yahweh Bashim Yahushua is worthy to be praised, because he's the one that treadeth down our enemies. And King David is a prime example. We read that. That's